Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? The Trump administration is acting in open defiance of a 9-0 Supreme Court order. We don't have a response from Justice Roberts yet. I don't know what we're going to get from him when we do. There's no question that what the Trump administration is doing is being done in defiance of the Supreme Court. If you take a look at the video of him receiving Bukele, the president of El Salvador, at the White House, it's very, very clear that Trump is barely even, like, conscientious of what's taking place. It seems like Stephen Miller is the person who is actually making these decisions, which makes sense because he's a intelligent and extremely evil person. Yeah, I don't. So where do we go from here? Where do we genuinely, like, that's my question. Like, here's a CNN video. Okay, is Trump defying the Supreme Court's order? Hear what a former judge thinks. This is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm worried that we're going to see. Well, I'm worried that we don't have a response to this besides effectively, oh my God, the constitutional crisis is right behind me, isn't it? You know, that's like this is not an I told you so thing, but I have said, like, one of my criticisms of the way liberalism tends to express power in the world today is that liberals are very reliant on institutions to guide how power behaves. They act as though power springs from the institutions rather than the institutions being reified by power. Does that make sense? So here we are, right? Like, it turns out if you have power, you can just do anything you want. And keep in mind, by the way, we only ran up against this wall because the Supreme Court deigned to issue a 9-0 ruling, right? The Supreme Court is conservative. They could have very well issued a 6-3 or 5-4 decision saying, no, Trump has the right to do whatever he wants. Like, it's only by circumstance that we arrived at this point. I imagine the Trump administration was a little bit blindsided by it too. I imagine they kind of expected the Supreme Court to, you know, like, we get it. They all know they're lying. They all know, they understand. But, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Does the court have the power to challenge the executive? Yeah, they just did in a 9-0 ruling that the executive ignored. Miller's been saying the 9-0 ruling was in favor of the executive branch. Well, of course, yeah, they lie as easily as they breathe. Yeah, so again, what do we do? Like, there's no actual legal ambiguity there. All power, it's at the end of the day, all power comes from the barrel of a gun. That's the quote, right? That's where we're at. I understand. I'm not being very helpful. I have no idea. I don't know. It seems like it might be over, at least for now. I still think that, like, the ultimately, like, what we're saved by is the fact that fascists are doctrinally incompetent. They are incapable of managing a stable government. They fall every time. We are, like, out of walls here. Here are some articles. U.S. judge to question Trump officials' refusal to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia. A federal judge in Maryland is expected to question the Trump administration Tuesday about its continued refusal to retrieve Kilmar Abrego Garcia, even after the Supreme Court ordered his return to the U.S. What is he going to do? Just issue an injunction? What would the injunction do? Send the marshals? What would the marshals do? See, that's the point, right? At the end of the day, like, all of this, it's the media environment as well, obviously. Like, citizens' unrest is something that can, you know, sort of undermine any governance. Right. Certainly, like, the Trump administration is not popular enough to really have the mandate, you know? But unfortunately, nobody seems to give a shit, right? Like, it's like nothing's actually happening, right? Dems going directly to El Salvador. Yes, there's a Democratic senator who's going to El Salvador. Okay, so what happens? You get me, right? I'm not trying to be doomer about this. It's just like we've run up against the problem here. And it does seem like no one cares. Now, I know, right, like, the politically engaged people care. But this is being treated with the same severity as any other bit in the news cycle. Trump is a crook. 34 felonies. Insider trading. USAID. Elon Musk. Defying a Supreme Court order. But it all fades. It's the flood the system, right? It's all just noise. Flood the zone, yeah. I mean, we're like, what about Ukraine? You've heard of this country, I assume. Euromaidan, right? Yanukovych, in contradiction to previous claims made and the will of the people, expressed his intention to back away from trade deals with the EU, which would have enriched Ukraine, and instead consolidate and trade with Russia because he was a puppet of Russia. And the people were so dissatisfied with this that it kicked off this massive wave of protests. Folks, what Yanukovych did then was nothing compared to what just happened here. Yanukovych went against the public will. This is so far beyond that. I don't know. Don't you think saying no one cares is a bit hyperbolic, though? Yes, and you're going to have to exercise the social competence to understand that when I say no one cares, I don't literally mean nobody. You're just going to have to work on your end. That's work. That's homework. You're going to have to do that. It's not good. 100,000 people flooded the streets of Boston. People care. You're gonna piss me off, and I promised earlier that I wouldn't flippantly ban people, but don't test me on that because I have no principles, and I will shift on that one on a dime. This isn't an opportunity for you to argue against me. We're on the same team here. I'm not your enemy. Don't argue with me on this. You know exactly what I mean. You can go Google Euromaidan if you want. I mean, if you've watched my streams for any length of time, you've covered it a bunch, so you're probably familiar with it. You understand the point that I'm making. The point is that, like, I don't understand where we go from here. I have no idea. What do you mean by where we go from here? I don't understand what, like, the mode of political action against this is. Like, if this is the norm, there won't be elections in 2026. Why would there be? You kidding me? We can just defy Supreme Court orders. Are you kidding? Like, meddling with state-run elections, that's child's play compared to this, you know? It seems like eventually you just run up against the line of, like, you know, either a big happening happens or you just wait for the internal contradictions to mount. And it's still possible, by the way, that, like, the economy that holds this together, because again, remember, everything that's happening right now is happening with the permission of the oligarchs, right? It's possible that, you know, enough turmoil takes place, unhappiness, whatever, that they ease up, they're forced to ease up. It's possible. But if they did that, they could just do all of this again. You know, that's not really a solution. If they eased up, like, so does it need to be like a DEFCON 1, you know, 5-alarm fire every time, 6 months of protests, and like any time they want to defy an order? We'll never get anything done. It's not possible. Whole rest of the world looking at you like that. Yeah, no, well, you can make it an American thing. I mean, the media environment that exists here. And to foreigners who watch this, by the way, and I encourage you, if you don't value your mental health, you should see what American media looks like. Just look at, like, every news. I usually use AP News because they don't have a paywall up, whatever. You can look at them and Reuters. It's dickless, centrist bullshit. They can barely even, like, you know, Trump could kill a guy on Main Street. They'd be like, you know, concerns raised over allegations that Trump killed, that bullshit, right? CNN openly panders to right-wingers. The CEO literally said it. MSNBC, dickless. ABC, NBC, whatever. Nothing. And then you've got Fox News and all that. Way more attention drawn that way. Incredibly partisan. Insane. So, yeah, like, in that environment, Americans are pretty dumb. You know, bound to happen, I guess. Dickless though they may be, Trump has asked for NBC to have their broadcast license pulled yesterday. I'm sure he did. I know I saw the BBC and AP articles yesterday about what Bukele said, and it seemed slow to get to the point. Do they even need the Insurrection Act now? Well, sure, why wouldn't they? You know, that would be the artifice. No. They're trying to pressure a U.S.-born immigration lawyer to self-deport. Yeah, that sounds about right. Homeland Security told U.S.-born immigration lawyer to leave country. Depart the U.S. immediately, even though removing U.S. citizens is illegal. Well, the law doesn't matter that much, so. Deport to where? I don't think they care. Probably, hopefully, it was sent to me in error, but it's a little concerning these are going out to U.S. citizens. Error seems likely. Why aren't there any real pushes for impeachment? Do you have the Senate votes for it? What impeachment? You Republicans aren't going to vote to impeach. They're fine with what's happening. See, again, like, you're not going to get saved by any of these rules because the way the system is set up, it relies on the idea that people follow them. Won't states fight back if the federal government can't? I don't know why you're asking me. You're asking me a lot of questions. You ask a lot of questions. But what do you think they can do? Like, genuinely, what do you think they can do? You know what? Don't answer that. You're going to ask more questions. You're not going to answer it. You're going to ask more questions. I don't care. It's not very satisfying, huh? Stop recognizing the executive branch's authority. I'm muting you for that one. I use neurons to read that message. Come on. You don't have to type anything if you don't have anything to say. Holy shit, half my work just got fired and an entire department replaced with AI literally 10 minutes ago. Damn. Well, it sounds like you didn't get fired, Zigabiz. The craziest part is how no one in power is doing anything. Well, like I said, it's an ideological failing here, right? Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Obviously, there's no way to know in the future. It just kind of seems like the way the pieces are set up right now. You collapse from internal contradictions, right? you falter, you run out of steam because the economy goes poorly, you know, the underlying systems that allow society to function at an acceptable level of efficiency, they fall apart. Or what? A sufficient level of civilian discontent would be and always will be enough, but we don't have it, you know? I know this may sound LARPy, but this is the time to call for revolution. You're right, that did sound LARPy. Yeah, but if not now, when? You've a fundamentally broken understanding of how these things develop, is all I'll say. You know, like that's like you're on a little rock outcropping, and the lava from the volcano eruption, it's like rising around you, and somebody's like, "We gotta fly out of here. Like we gotta fly with magic," and then you're like, "I don't think we can do that." And they're like, "Well, if not now, when? Like what other time would that be to do that? You know?" You have to approach these. It's everyone wants a damn solution. No one knows what's going on. Certainly not the people in the administration. They're just seeing what they can get away with, which is everything. They can get away with everything. Have you seen the real ID stuff going around? You mean the legal change to ID requirements for travel that have been posted for years? Have you considered blaming Democrats? Yes, I have considered that. I have done that. Will you consider leaving the country at some point? You know, I get asked that question like 500 times every stream now, and I have to say it's getting a little bit tiring. Yeah, I'll tell you what, okay? If my background changes, you'll know. You'll see you'll see it happen. I won't be able to move my house with me, will I? This isn't a green screen in Beijing. Well, don't worry about it. All right.